Well, hello and welcome to week one of season two of the WTRL Zwift Racing League. I'm Kate Bates, joined by the one and only booming voice of Dave Toll, and we're here for America West League. Dave, you've been at this all day. Some pretty exciting racing so far.
The best. It really has been amazing. Kate, it's so good to see you. I have to say, I've really missed you the last couple of weeks. It wasn't the same. So I'm really glad we're back at it here with season one. But you're right. Incredibly exciting racing. I didn't get up early enough to watch you and Anna starting the day in APAC, but sounds like you saw a breakaway stick as well. That's what I heard from Nathan. And we certainly saw breakaways. We had a world record holder, a world champion racing with us, Ashton Lambie in America's East. And certainly we saw our colleague, Anna Russell, and her team put on an incredible display of might as well. That's Sarah's the Pros Closet. So absolutely, Kate, incredible racing today. And what's amazing is as soon as we jump in with the racing, we're out on Richmond Reverse, the UCI Worlds course, but backwards. They get right at it within the first 5K. And I'm hearing that the women are just out on course now. You're going to see this race blowing up. We've already got a very, very select group. We didn't start with a large field. Let's talk about that so people aren't surprised. But I think you're going to see it splintering on 23rd. Then they hit Libby. We have a lot to talk about, Kate. There have been some changes in the point structure as well. So I'll throw it back to you as the women are out on course.
We do, Dave. I mean, we'll see some familiar faces from last season, but also some new teams and some new faces. The courses, they've mixed it up a little bit this year. So season one, they raced here in Richmond, but the other way around. So this time it's reverse. 16.1 kilometres a lap. They go around it twice. But the big hairy point is very early on, Dave. There's two really nasty KOMs. And then they go up a climb that's arguably even harder, not categorised as a KOM. When they're out on course, we can talk through the intricacies of the new point structure and how they're doing it. But you referenced that there were some smaller fields out on course today. And let's just deep dive a bit into why that's happening. Now, the WTRL crew, they're unreal in the way that they've structured all of this. And they've also consulted really heavily with the community about what they want. And something that's come back, particularly in the women, as a very strong point is that they want their own A, B, C, and D divisions, and they don't want to be merged. So last season we saw a few divisions merged. We might have the ABs together or the CDs. The women in particular have said, across the board, we don't want that. We want our own categories. And that's resulted in a few smaller fields for some of the women. But I think, Dave, that it is really good that the WTRL have respected what the teams want. And, it'll change the dynamic a little bit. And I think it's kind of like going out on course with a breakaway already established with a smaller field.
Perfectly put. And I couldn't agree more. It's not only listening to, I mean, in this case, the racer is the customer, it's their events, but I completely understand where they're coming from both sides of that coin. As a B racer, I want to race, or C racer, or D racer, I want to race against racers of my ability. And the dynamic of who's the last B racer left in the A group, sure, it's interesting, but it's only interesting really because it's the only story to talk about. To be fair, learning how to race. And Kate, I've never heard your origin story with racing, how young you were when you first, showed up at a start line. There's a big difference between riding a bike and racing a bike. That's for sure. But the dynamic of racing, you have to learn how to win. You have to learn how to execute tactics and strategy. And you don't do that by barely hanging on by the skin of your teeth day after day at the back end of the group. You learn how to suffer. You learn how to become fitter. There's no doubt about it. And I get that. But we're here to race and learn. And tactics are a big, big part of what makes racing awesome.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think that globally, this conversation is being had again and again in clubland and at club level, where they say we're not putting on a race, there aren't enough women who have turned up. But that's actually discouraging a lot of women from ever turning up because they feel like it's a complete waste of their time. So huge kudos to Zwift for putting that out there. And I actually think even if we've got some smaller numbers or what appears to be smaller numbers this season, that it will have a really big flow-on effect to increase participation in the following seasons, which is great. Now, the women are out on course, so we'll jump down and take a look at what's happening there. We've got some big names that are back for this season, Dave, that we saw last season. Barbara Fazoli, Anna Rogers, Alicia Starts, Joy Connolly. They're probably the four names that really animated the racing last series. Jana Gillick, I can see her there sitting in fourth wheel. So it's great to have them back.
Yeah, that's Anna Rogers, the Canadian right now on the front. Well, very quickly, let me mention the power-ups that are in play. As there are three of them: draft, arrow, and feather. You've got a one-third opportunity as you pick them up out there. Draft gives you that 50% greater draft for 30 seconds. The other two, arrow, that's going to be your aerodynamic efficiency, your coefficient of drag. That reduces by 25% for 15 seconds. And then everybody knows the feather power up, 10% off your body weight for 15 seconds. Alicia Stats has been a breakthrough rider. Season one, she certainly became a name of note. I like to look at it this way, Kate. You know, there's the quantity people and there's quality people. Would you rather have a really big burrito that's not very good or a smaller, excellent burrito? I'll go with the smaller, excellent burrito every time.
That's so American of you to compare it to a burrito. I'm really impressed with that. I like that. But no, point
and I'm
made.
talking about our field
very
here.
Clear
Like,
point made.
So it looks like the break has come out of the first climb. They're on their way down Libby Hill. It takes such a long time to get used to this. I was laughing, Kate. The World Championships I was actually lucky enough to announce at the Libby Hill here, and someone was one of the motorcycle drivers who participated in that Worlds, working as a helper, would mention, "Oh, I can't believe they have them racing down Libby Hill. That's crazy." And I'm like, well, you have to understand, this is virtual racing. No one's going to crash on the cobblestones out here. And it took him a minute. He's like, "Oh yeah, good point, good point." So yeah, it's certainly, I couldn't imagine what it would have been like if we had sent them down a couple of these cobbled climbs. They're severe. When you race this direction, Kate, what I think, it compacts the intensity in even more. A rider was talking with Nathan about this. If you are that watch per kilo monster, you love it. It gives you a lot to work with. It's just a wall that you're climbing up rather than the more gradual climb, like they're going to start pretty soon here as they start making their way up to Monument and Broad, where we'll find the finish line. We do have multiple QOM and sprint points along the way out here. This gives you a good look at the course. It's pretty steep on your way up to Broad. You'll see it hit 6% for a while, and then it pretty much flattens out. Although, you know, by the time you come across the finish line, it's still a 1% grade right there.
And the big difference doing it in reverse, and we can see this perfectly on this fabulous course profile, is the normal way round. There's only about 2.5 kilometres from that 23rd Street climb to the finish. But when they do it this way round, there's actually about 10 kilometres from the Broad Street climb that isn't a KOM, but is definitely a peak up, as we can see on the profile, before they get to the finish. So that really changes the ability of somebody who can break away on those climbs to actually stay away and keep any distance. But if memory serves me correctly, Dave, it was fairly bleak conditions in 2015 when the Worlds were won and run there. So I think that they're probably lucky in the virtual world that they don't have to deal with that, as well as the cobbles, as well as the climbs.
Yeah, it was throughout that week, it never warmed up. It was never what you'd call completely miserable either, but it was what I would call Zwifting weather. I would have rather been inside on Zwift, that's for sure. As we take a look at this front group now, so Anna Rogers, Alicia Stats, Jana Gillick, and Haley Gill are the riders that we're looking at. Velocity Vixen have been a very strong team. Always remember ATP Swarm out here as well. But this is a Vixen kind of day, isn't it? As it looks like they've gone into complete team time trial mode. Kate, in your career, a little before your time as world champion, there was a squad called, I'm thinking of Mape, actually, at Paris-Roubaix, where they swept the podium. They went to the owner of the sponsor of the team to say, "Who would you like to see win today, boss?" as the guys are coming into the velodrome. You don't get that opportunity very often, but we're seeing the same kind of thing. This is what Anna Rogers tried to instigate with her Sarah's STP team, but they had some passengers in their race. But it's all Velocity Vixens right now. The Orange Express has left the station. If you're not on it, I don't know if you're going to win a bike race here today.
No, I mean, we did open by talking about the reduced numbers in the women's field, but I also remember when they went around Richmond the other direction in season one, and there were only a few extra riders in this bunch at that stage. There were only probably 4 or 5 other riders who were able to even keep up with the likes of Rogers and Gillick around this course. So I don't think it actually makes any difference to the quality of racing or the depth there. Jana Gillick and Anna Rogers are probably the two more powerful riders if it would come down to a sprint or even an attack over the top of those KOMs. And you have to wonder, from a training perspective, toward the back end of the race, will they start attacking each other and really trying to get the strategy drilled and almost treat some of their team members like they're, not on their side?
It's an interesting question. And who would make that decision? I mean, I guess the racers ride the race, right? So they do in a lot of ways. So most of these teams operate with a director or a central office, I guess you'd say. Someone has to make the decisions and organize the team. You need a service course, a virtual service course, I guess. But yeah, interesting question. How do you manage these kind of situations? And bike racing will throw it all at you. Sometimes you have moral conundrums, right? Do you wait for the yellow jersey if they have a flat tire, that kind of thing? Well, do you sprint against your teammates? I'm sure that you've had that question asked.
Yeah, and I think we've got to consider what the long game of these ladies might be, because each race last season they performed just that little bit better. Strategically, they really nailed it by the end. They got a little bit more polished. And I wonder if their long game is to actually progress up to Premier League. And if that is their mission, then it would serve them very well to race hard every single week, even if they are in a position of dominance, and to really push it, to try different things, to almost break the team into a couple of different cohorts. And almost like a training race, they're racing against each other, even though it's an actual race, to make sure that their progress altered at all, because I would hate to see the dominance lead to kind of a stagnation in their progress. And look, they've got at least Anna Rogers is their team director. She looks after that side of stuff. And from what we've seen, I think she deserves the credit that they're a pretty savvy team. And it wouldn't surprise me if they sort of see what happens in week one and then moving forward, they can have a bit of a play around with that.
Completely agree. You know what it reminds me of in any sport, when you have a lopsided scenario, the real I was going to say real athletes. That's not what we're talking about. But people who want to get better, they don't want to just win. They want to get into the battle and have the experience and work on your craft. And for that reason, like let's say you're at a 14-year-olds playing soccer or football or basketball or cricket. If one team is dominating, what's the first thing that the leaders in that group do? Is they'll say, okay, we got to rearrange these teams. Let's move some of the talent from this team over to that team. We're going to shuffle things up to make a more competitive balance. Well, same thing out here. We've seen that in racing, Kate, before, where one team, remember Saturn? The Saturn women's team in the 2000s, there was a time where the sport would have been better served, or it happened with the HealthNet team or United Healthcare teams, where it would have been better for the sport if we split that team into two. It would have made a better show. It would have been much better racing for everybody involved if the 8 best riders in the race weren't on the same damn team.
Well, and it's something that happens a lot in sport in Australia when you're talking especially about like rugby league is a good example, where they have salary caps. I'm not sure if they do this in the US sports.
They do.
And
absolutely.
The salary cap kind of ensures that no one team is, and it's good to see them, there you go, sprinting at the intermediate. So clearly the team will take home the points, but good to see them still making the effort. And Dave, the salary cap kind of ensures that no one team gets all the talent, and they have to decide where to apportion those funds, and what kind of riders to buy. And very arguably, especially in the men's side of things at the moment, if you look at like Team Ineos, I think everybody's almost kind of disappointed when they sign another big rider, because you think you want them spread across different teams. And I do also think that the more it evolves, the closer to that we'll get. I would actually argue that that may happen on Zwift before it happens in real life, because I think that it comes very quickly to the fore in Zwift racing, more so than it does necessarily out on the road.
Completely agree. And you can make these adjustments very quickly as well. But very well stated, Kate. I completely agree. The one thing, kind of going back to what you were talking about, don't blame the women who are racing for these scenarios, though. I give all, like when you say, boy, the women's field is not you, but when you hear folks say, boy, the women's field is small, maybe we should merge them. It's like, please don't. Let's continue to try to grow this field here, because we need to give them their own slot to race. And you're not going to grow things by merging and combining and just not giving the athletes the opportunity to learn and shine. The men are now out on course here, so same thing for them. 2 laps out on Richmond Reverse. Kate, I love Richmond Reverse. I found this course to bring. Now, one thing's for sure, don't wait till the middle of the race to pick up the action, because it comes at you immediately. These guys will give us a good example. As a matter of fact, this is the first time today that I've seen the first K of racing, because it goes from the gun, Kate Bates.
Well, when the first KOM is only about 2 kilometres in, you can do so much damage. And across the board, men's and women's, all of the divisions, we saw in APAC, Dave, that a lot of the moves were going in that first kind of 10 kilometres where they go over 2 KOMs, and then also up another little kicker that isn't a KOM but still pretty tough. And then the field was reduced down to 30, 40 riders, which is much more manageable than this giant field, 91 they've got out there for the men's A. So I think that's a tactic that they've really been employing. But we've got a couple of the superstars from last season who are lining up again. Philippe Nystrom is probably the big name, I think, to look for from Costa Rica. Travis Frazier from OMG They Killed Kenny. He's another one that had a really good ride in Richmond, particularly last season, but also pretty consistent kick on him overall. So it's good to see those names back, but also some new faces as well.
Watch out for Lars Monks of the Finesse team out here as well. And we're going to get a good feel. This is Sweet here, the Vision team, a rider I like a lot. And this is going, look at the numbers here. They're throwing up some massive watts up on the board. So you're not going to win the bike race here in the first 2K, Kate, but you can lose it. That's for sure. If you miss the train as it's rolling out of the station, and believe me, it's going right now. They've blown the whistle. All aboard the Wattage Express as we're leaving Richmond. So points scored. I have to remember that each race, we have a fresh set of eyeballs on it out there. So the bonuses have changed a little bit. You can see we're scoring 10 deep now as the first points being picked up there on 23rd. They've got another KOM coming up very, very quickly here on Libby. I mean, you are just dive bombing down. The pro tip of the day is certainly exactly, you don't want to be these guys right here. And so that one wasn't scored. I apologize. It's the next one that we're scoring. The one that's coming up now, we'll be scoring 10 deep here.
And so that's good to explain a bit of a change from last season. Last season, we only went 3 to 5 deep, depending on the race. They changed that a bit from memory, but this time they are going 10 deep. So that kind of gives the riders a bit more impetus to continue sprinting. They also have points, Dave, for fastest through segment. So that is different to first over the line, first 10 over the line. The other change they've had in regards to points is overall they're now going 80 deep instead of 30 deep. So we've got 91 riders out on course. that makes every rider out on course in contention to earn some points. So let's take a look at the
There
bonus
they
points so far. They've gone up one. They're about to go. They're about to cross through this second one here. We're just watching Sosnowski. Isn't the acceleration up this cobble's pretty impressive? Johnson coming in second. In that first sprint, it was Ziegler who took the points ahead of Sweet, Heinlein, Cameron O'Reilly in fourth. Bit of a different mix in this second time around, Dave. I mean, that indicates to me that maybe the burn of those KOMs really does a bit of damage, and they do need to drop back in the pack and recover a bit between.
Yeah, well, and this was what was so interesting in some of the earlier races was every race played out differently as we it was such a big riders surprisingly came back from the dead, I guess is a good way to put it, or what you would have thought would have been a group that wasn't going to rejoin. We saw that a few times throughout the day. So surprisingly resilient. And I think after that huge effort over those first two climbs, that the reality that it is going to be a long 32 and a half kilometers of racing here. And it looks like we're going to merge
I,
these two groups together, Kate.
I feel like, Dave, when people start their Zwift racing career, they look at the distances and they're like, that's not too bad. But it's like, how can I describe it? It's like a criterium on steroids. It is full on from the absolute first pedal stroke. And we talked about Ashton Lambie starting in one of the earlier locations today. And you said he almost got a bit of a shock because he's a bit new to the Zwift world. I do feel like some riders who come in underestimate a little bit the intensity of how these guys race. And it is pretty full on. A lot of gaps often open up pretty quickly, but they do have quite a big bunch that have come back together now. There's around 50 riders coming back into it. I expect there won't be too many more breaks until the next time through those climbs. But this is where, teams can start to look at those bonus points accrued so far and perhaps tweak the pre-race strategy a little bit.
Very popular team that we're looking at right now with I'm going to call them the YEG CX, the YEG CX team. This is Claffey that we're with here. It's, again, nice to see teams making a move up into this division and certainly a squad to watch out here. But I agree with you, Kate. I think that the next time you're really in danger of getting tailed off of this group or getting your ticket punched out here is going to be the bonus sprints that we have. So many points available. I mean, as we saw in some of the previous races, there were riders collecting upwards of 40 points out there, and that's what the win is worth. So they've doubled the value of these QOMs, KOMs, and bonuses. And as you mentioned, that time sector going to be coming into play. But we'll be watching this. What are you going to go with, Kate? You're going to call them YEG?
Yeah, well, Anna and I were discussing on APAC that it took nearly the whole season to figure out what these acronyms meant. So we can go with YEG. Can somebody please jump into the live stream
Someone will tell us
on
right.
YouTube and tell us what it is, please? Tell us what it stands for.
Otherwise,
we'll just continue to guess week in and week out until somebody explains that to us, which can also be kind of good sport as well. Let's flick back to the women here. Now, we also need to consider within the women that there might be a bit of sub-team going on here because Anna Rogers and Alicia Starts particularly usually ride for Revo. They are here on screen under Vixen, and we're wondering if perhaps that is because they're having to combine to make that team to make the numbers up. So that's a curious one as well. Do we have a few divisions within what is labelled as one team? Let's take a look at those bonus points. Alicia Starts, jeepers, 27 points so far. Isn't she off to a cracking start? Only one ahead of Jana Gillick, Anna Rogers and Hayley Gill, both sitting on 24 points. Starts was one of the riders last season, Dave, that we didn't talk about much in the first couple of weeks, but by the end, she was really quite a dominating force.
Yeah, she's another rider out of Seattle. There you go. Thank you, Marcus. You ask, and there you go. Marcus, the man on the spot. So that is the airport code for Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I should have
Well, there you
known
go. I
that. I've
actually,
been to
yeah,
that
I
airport.
like to think that I know airport codes pretty well, but I must say I haven't flown into Edmonton before, so I don't recognise that. But thank you very much for clarifying that. And look, there's quite a
Yep.
lot of people jumping in, which is very helpful, I must admit. And feel free, anybody, to jump in when we're butchering any acronyms. We
Please.
like your help with assistance.
So, Anna, if I'm the director here for the Velocity Vixen team, I would shout out, okay, pink hats, you're one team. All right. And yeah, we were
Exactly.
talking.
Oh, you're not delving into the old-fashioned stakes, are you, here, Dave? Because
Oh
you know
no,
Anna and
that's
I
you
get
and
into
Ann. That's you and Anna's territory. Nathan and I will steer clear of that. That's for sure. Well, thanks, Adrian, for sure. Well, how many great riders are coming out of Seattle? My goodness, you had Laura Matson Coe, Keller v. Wynn, Meredith Keller, and certainly Alicia Stats is the latest in a long line of esports superstars out of the Pacific Northwest, particularly Seattle, actually. I don't know if you ever had a chance to get up to Seattle to race, but such a beautiful part of the United States.
Look, my only familiarity with Seattle is from that delightful movie with Meg Ryan in it and Tom Hanks. I
Sleepless.
think you'll know the one I'm talking
Yep.
about.
Yep. Sleepless
But
in
I do
Seattle
know
with
that
the
it is meant
houseboat.
to be exactly. It's meant to be one of the better, by reputation, cycling places in the US. So I can tell you as a foreigner, that is the reputation it holds. We've got
Wow. So this
O'Reilly
is
has shot off the front here. This is quite a big break, actually. 6 seconds back to Monks. You spoke about him before, Dave, saying that he was certainly one to watch. And then another 3 back to Van der Veen, and pretty much the whole bunch is coming there. So I wonder if O'Reilly's attacked and Monks has attempted to go across here. It's a long way on
it's
your own. He can pick up some good points, but still quite a long way to race.
I'm trying to do a little bit of research because O'Reilly in the American cycling lexicon historically, there was Rory O'Reilly raced in the 1984 Olympics. He was our kilometer racer. He ended up 7th place, but then his son, Cody O'Reilly, went on to be a pro, raced for a good decade. And this is Cameron O'Reilly. And I'm wondering if it is it may or may not be. I actually would give it about, because so many times, I think it's the same in Australia, you see a pretty strong family bond in cycling. And a lot of times that comes back to the junior racing, where if one kid is racing, the others race as well. And if there's talent in the DNA, a lot of times that is dispersed amongst the entire group of kids. But either way, O'Reilly is putting the pressure on right now. A lot of times I look and think, okay, are we trying to steal some points? Because I think that might be the case, Kate, is with those 10 points that you get for the top bonus, it makes it worth it to make that effort. And if you're a team that has the luxury of having riders that you can use for different means out there and have some, I guess you'd call it a points hunter, well, it can be quite valuable. Although this is going to come back together here.
But good that he's animating the race. When Jacob Claffey went off the front before, what was interesting about his attack is he's not particularly suited to that shorter, sharper stuff. So we wouldn't necessarily expect to see him bursting out of the pack in a final sprint. But what he does have is pretty incredible 20-minute power numbers. So we know he's a bit of a diesel, bit of a time trialist. So his opportunity to get points is not in those intermediates. His opportunity to get points is definitely in a breakaway. So it's good to see the different strength riders playing off their own tactics amongst it. I'm not sure that this is the kind of course where, especially in the first, 16, 18 kilometres, many breaks will be allowed to go. They might go, but then come straight back. But definitely those last two KOMs that leave you with about 12K left to go will be pretty interesting. Over to the women, we've got Joy Connolly trying to jump across. She's still about 25 seconds behind that leading group. In fact, starts is a few seconds off the front of Rogers, Gill slightly back from that, and Gillick. I mean, they're essentially all solo riders at the moment, having a big, long,
Huh.
dysfunctional team's time trial.
Well, yeah, I've seen team time trial squads that have gotten worse than this even out there, but you got to give Alicia Stat
Yeah,
credit.
yeah, we saw a few of those last season, especially in the early ones. But to their credit, by the end, most of them had gotten it together.
This is a rider for the future, no doubt about it. We were just talking about her hometown of Seattle, and she's why. As Alicia has such a bright future out here, and she is rolling it now. The Canadian Anna Rogers, Yana Gillick, these are the names that have made the race. It was interesting to see Joy Connolly, and it is going to come back together here. So that's your original four. This is Joy. She's
Well,
heading down
Dave,
these
I know
cobblestones.
before Christmas, Alicia said that she was really hoping Santa, and by Santa, I think she meant her husband, would bring her one of those Wahoo bikes to put in her pain
Did she
cave.
get
So
it?
I'm wondering if that show of dominance is kind of fueled by a new bike over Christmas. We'll have to find that out.
And Nathan does such a great job of monitoring the social media, and I feel bad because I believe that I talked right over the top of a post that came in, possibly about first responders out there. And I have a feeling that a few of the women that we have racing work in that arena. There you go. Thanks, Sarah. Sarah Strange was talking about being hardworking essential workers that couldn't race the Premier League times. That is very understandable. We're lucky wherever you are in the world to have those folks that are really stepping up and leaning in for us out there. So many different ways.
Oh, and I mean, isn't it incredible that they're essential workers? We've got many doctors, surgeons, a lot of lawyers amongst the group, although people could possibly argue lawyers aren't as essential, but depends what experiences you've had. Anyway, moving on, that all of these guys have these big jobs. A lot of them have kids. They're balancing a lot, and they're still able to find the time to kind of fuel their hobby and their passions, to do the training and to turn up and be at such an impressive level. I mean, it's a bit of an honour for us to get to commentate on them. A sprint happening here for some points. Uh, the Monument Sprint replay we're just taking a look at, and Felton Barnes is almost coming over the top of him. It looks like he'll duck over. It happens quickly. I think we've seen a lot in APAC, Dave, and interested in the other leagues, that the riders who are going too early are often getting rolled for those points.
Sure are. Yeah, we've learned that timing has been absolutely critical. And on these brick sprints, it makes an even bigger difference out here going back in with the men. So, okay, that was the most recent monument sprint. We'll see how those points start stacking up. There's a little bit more going on in the background. You can hear the supercomputers working away as we have changed up the bonuses, adding these timed segments to look out for as well. And as you're talking about with the women's categories, just responding to what the racers were looking for after season one. And I think that it's been universal as far as I've seen the way people have been receiving the changes to the league as we're out here on race number one of season number two. I think I can speak for my colleague, Kate Bates. It's so good to see everybody back out here and racing. And going back to what you're saying, Kate, for so many of us. And man, I wish Zwift had come along. Two things like high school mountain biking and Zwift. I wish they'd come along earlier in my life. That's for sure, because just so good for your mental health, not just your physical well being, but just where you're at, your overall well being benefits so greatly from exercise. And that's at the end of the day, we have so much fun doing this, but you get a great workout in. That's for sure. I mean, it goes beyond a workout, doesn't it? This is an all body experience racing on Zwift.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, I think it's kind of funny to watch the commentary on social media around some of the athletes feeling as though they've perhaps eaten too much Christmas pudding, and season two being slightly more challenging to start than season one was. But that's something to really consider as well, especially the favourites that we see, coming back each week and each season, is you can't be on top form every week of the year. So some of these riders will hit those kind of PB powers in Zwift that we see. Some weeks, other weeks they may be a little bit off. So we'll get to know, I think, after a couple of seasons where the riders' priorities are, which seasons are better for them, which they're turning up a little bit fitter, and which ones they're just committing to for the team or to continue moving forward.
Yeah. It's interesting, Kate, with riders who are starting to have success, you have to really, have that conversation about you can't continue to just keep winning every race you do forever. You have to understand the peaks and the valleys of fitness. I was just the other day heard a comment from. We're going to take a look at a live view right now. As I was talking about, Ned Overend was talking about the fact that, getting in shape is tough. The real trick is to never let yourself get that far out of shape. When continue to stay active. You don't want to pull a Jan Ulrich, right? Put on 20K and half the kilos and have to come back from that. You got to keep it reasonable out there. As we're in with Brian Kellison
I was
right
going to
now.
pipe in with that, Dave, that it can only be Jan Ulrich is the best example. We're going to get Brian Kellison, as you were saying, up on screen. Just his screen. He goes on Twitch Live. We've seen him before.
I think we're going to jump in.
He's pretty animated, isn't he, Dave?
Yeah, we've met Brian before, and familiar character. Good to see you back. Good job, Brian. So Penn Velo is the team. They're up there in Northern California. Super strong squad, very motivated, and he's a good communicator as well. We've enjoyed meeting Brian. So we're big fans of riders who run their own Twitch out here. It's so much fun as you learn about the people behind the avatar. That is one great way to do it, Kate, is pick a couple riders that you enjoy and watch their Twitch.
It's good to see the body language as well as what's happening with the avatar, because we can kind of pontificate about what their body language may be and how hard they may be working based on the power that they're putting out. But it really adds another element when they do pop up on screen like that, and you get to see. And you know what? He actually looked pretty comfortable. I mean, 160 heart rate, you'd imagine he's starting to feel slightly uncomfortable. Rock and roll a little bit on the bike, but he looked pretty in control, actually.
I'm answering my own question earlier about Cameron O'Reilly. I'm going to guess that he's from a different O'Reilly clan. He rides for the Alto Velo racing team, but I see over on Zwift Power up there in NorCal, the Alto Velo team is the squad, and he's the manager of that team. So certainly representing very well. Again, Brian Kellison, man of the moment here, nicely tucked into this group for the Penn Velo team. And you see them picking up some speed.
Well, this is a place, so when it goes over 5%, you can do the power tuck, but Anna pointed out last night at this point on the course that if you don't come out of that power tuck before the game forces you out of it, it can actually be quite a big disadvantage. So if it pulls you out of that power tuck around the 3% mark, but you need to start pedaling before you hit that. Exactly. It'll then bog you down. We can see Brian Kellison, again, now he's starting to rock and roll a little bit more on the bike. But interestingly, his heart rate is a little bit lower. So, Dave, I think this is perfectly to our point that we can only use the heart rate and the numbers as a bit of a guide. But I think that power's starting to go up, the heart rate's starting to climb, and this is an indicator that they're really turning the pace on here.
Yeah, and this is where it really hurts. Again, the getting over 23rd in Libby is what it's all about. That really puts you into the finale of the race, but you've got to get there first. And yeah, you can see now the body language tells us that this man is making big watts right now as we look at Brian. I mean, look at all the red and orange over here on the power profile. That says it all. That's all you need to know. He's on fire right now, and fuego here as our men are getting deep into it. It looks like, all right, so we're actually seeing the front of the bike race now, and he's back right on cue is going to be Cameron O'Reilly. Guys up in Northern California are all over this one
popping
right
his
now.
head up, doesn't he? O'Reilly, I mean, he may not be from the same O'Reilly family, but maybe they're creating another chapter of the O'Reillys going on here, because he seems to be in the right place at the right time. The other rider who has started to creep up is Philippe Nystrom. I spotted him about 5 wheels back from the Costa Rica team. He had an incredible turn of speed last season, and I think if he can hang on at the finish, he'll do very well there as well. But we do have a couple of new riders, or riders that didn't necessarily jump out last time. But if you head into Zwift Power and take a look at some of the numbers, especially towards a sprint, it's riders like Edwin Park and Lars Monks that really stand out if it does come down to even a little group. 19%. Did you see that? It just hit 19%.
Wow. Yeah,
This
just that
is
flash.
definitely a nasty one.
This is where your smart trainer makes noises that you've never heard it make before, right? When you're throwing that many watts at it, and it's trying to basically stop you. As it's like, look, you're going up a 20% grade. For those who aren't initiated into what that means, I mean, that means for every 100 feet you're going forward, you're climbing 19 feet in that example. That's an incredibly steep climb, no doubt about it. Here we go. The race is being won and lost right in front of our eyes as the guys are getting deep. They're getting stuck in. Now, this is that very unique view as we are on reverse Richmond. And that's the park that usually you finally get to take a breath as you come out of the cobblestones. But here we're going to dive into them now. And we'll make our way down to the bottom, down to the docks here before we start our way back up. And let's see how many men are still really a part of this race at that point. I'm anticipating a pretty big split being made. Let's see how many guys can chase back in now.
Well, the trainers, you hark on about, touched on, the trainer settings. And I remember the first time I set my trainer setting to the realistic mode where when you go over gravel or cobbles, it kind of shakes a little bit. And I got the shock of my life. I really thought that the trainer was about to explode because I wasn't quite prepared for what that meant. I would suggest that if you're racing in these leagues, you'd probably turn that off because you want to be able to feel that consistency of power even through those cobbled sections. That might be a tip for anybody who's just jumped into Zwift racing and normally loves that effect. I think probably turning it off for racing is a good thing in order to keep that kind of neural consistency with your legs, because even if in game it slows you down a little bit, the less your legs feel that, probably the more efficient for them.
Ziegler, Monks, couple riders getting caught in this second group that tells me it will come back together with this much talent back here. But not an ideal situation right now, but they're going to right the ship here as we move into the finale now for the men. So this is the last race of the day as we've made our way around the globe. This is going to be McCormick here of the Dad's Inside Riding Trainers, the Dirty Rascals Riot team, as he's going to connect. And it looks like another 10 riders or so will join this group to make this the ultimate selection here on Richmond Reverse. All right, Kate, let's lock it down. I think we can close the back door and put a padlock on it. Nobody else is going to be joining this group. The winner of this race is on your screen right now. But boy, there's a lot of riders who are still in the mix here.
We've got about 30 riders in that front group. Just taking a look at those bonus points so far. Cameron O'Reilly, the new O'Reilly royalty, he has taken quite a solid lead so far on 27 points. Lars Monks, one of your hot favourites, Dave, he's taken 21 points so far. Quinn Felton has taken third. Philippe Nystrom is sitting back on 16 points. I would say it's still fairly open at this point as
they're adding,
to what
that
may
last
happen.
Sorry, Kate, sorry to jump on you, but your pick, Philippe, the Costa Rican, as they update the last points there, moves up into second on points right now, right behind Cameron O'Reilly here. So nice call, Kate. Lars Monks with 21 points in third. So this just updated as we were looking at the table. These are the bonus points that have been on offer up to this point. You can see that distribution going a lot to O'Reilly, Nystrom, and Monks here. It sounds like a law firm.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Out of Boston Legal or something like that. Nystrom's one of those riders who, on paper, isn't necessarily one that you go, oh my goodness, this guy will light it up. But see, he's super savvy and he seems to really know how to ride efficiently and when to come into his own. And I have a feeling that when it comes down to the closing moments, that he will have conserved a bit more energy. Brian dug so deep at the beginning, all red power numbers for him to stay there. That's a bit of commentary on Brian Kellison, who we've seen pop up on screen a couple of times. And look at that graph that he's talking about. All that red is where he's literally gone into the red zone to get over those climbs. It almost kind of mimics our course profile a little bit. That big section at the beginning, that will have done him a little bit of damage. And that may be, it kind of explains, Dave, while even though his heart rate isn't too high, he may be suffering a little bit as a result of that. But I think he's done a really good job, because this is a really select group now. We're down to 28. It's kind of the case where one by one, rather than people going off the front, Dave, people are just getting dropped off the back. That elastic band is snapping and they can't hold on any longer.
It sure is. And, Kate, that is the perfect example as you look at Brian there. The difference between racing and working out, right? You can't get that graph without having to chase down riders and closing down gaps. And this is where you get the very, very most out of yourself out here. All right, we are picking up now with under 10K to the finish as we're in with Chan, another one of the Penn Velo riders. That's a teammate of Brian Kellison, who we've been spending some time with here. They're pushing now, accelerator going down on the floorboard. You see some of the power-ups. Again, draft, arrow, and feather are the three that the riders will have to choose from. It's modified power-ups that we have in-game here. Northway, OTR, relatively large group there. When you see the women, a completely different story, as it's been all Velocity Vixens. Anna Rogers and company here. They're about 3.5K from the finish now. We'll see what happens out here with how they want to race this one. Again, it's entirely their prerogative at this point. Is this team? You made a good point, Kate. I would like to see these ladies getting up into the Premier League. Riders at this level, I think that they're ready. They really are. It was eye-opening yesterday with the men and the women about when you see the teams that didn't have the experience of racing in season one. When you talk about a steep learning curve, it is a massively steep learning curve, and these are riders that have figured that out, no question. As we look at, I wonder how they are going to play this one. I would imagine that. Why not sprint?
I mean,
right?
The comment,
have some fun with it.
Why not? And the comment about them being kind of unable to race in Prem League, given everything else going on in their lives, kind of highlights that they're really committed to this and they're doing everything that they can. Now, with that kind of personality and this kind of performance, they don't strike me as the kind of riders who will ride across the line holding hands, all four of them. I think it's probably game on from now. And this is where they can actually learn and really polish the craft of Zwift sprinting, because essentially there's nothing to lose from a team perspective. So why not just give it a crack and test out your own? Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Right. It's not like we're going outside of the boundaries of Foot's Fair. It's all in good fun, ladies. And so typically you don't like to see teammates fighting. That's not what's happening. We're all trying to get better at this craft. And winning a sprint out of this group is a complicated thing, and you don't have to worry about getting caught. You're not going to crash. There, some of the things that you might think, oh boy, discretion tells me this might not be a smart move. Well, no, you're cleared, ladies, to go have some fun out there. I'd love to find out who the fastest woman of this group of four, because you've all impressed us out here. The four riders of the apocalypse today. I mean, they have definitely shown us what a super strong team is all about. It's almost unheard of to see something like this happen. So they've done that. So we're at about a little under 2K to the finish. Let her rip, ladies.
Yeah, well, now, I mean, you could approach this in a number of different ways. But what we can say for sure is whoever wins this sprint, this kick, is impressive and could essentially sprint at Premier League level, because that's the level of performance and athlete we've got going on in this front group of four. We'll call them that, the front group. And I'm wondering
The
if
vanguard.
somebody might take a yeah, I mean, they might take a bit of a dig at a last minute attack, which is difficult to do when there's only four riders, but it may be laying off the wheel and kind of hitting them from the back when they're already really moving. I wouldn't mind seeing somebody do that rather than all roll into the finish
Spoken,
together and then just sprint for the line.
spoken like a true sprinter there, Kate. Wouldn't mind taking a whack at this one, would you?
Yep. Yep. I
Yeah,
don't think you ever lose
you
the
would tee them
mentality,
up too.
honestly. I can't do it anymore,
I mean,
but I want to.
look, my colleague, who never blows her own horn, is a world champion in an event that requires sprinting over and over again. And here we go. They're going to have some fun with this one. All right. So it looks like Janet Gillick is going to hit out first, and they're going to throw down their power ups as well, or throw up their power ups. There is that arrow. But that drafting power up there, that might be the difference. Here we go, as it's Gill here. I love it, ladies. Great job out there, and all the credit in the world today to the Velocity Vixen squad. I certainly look forward to see where this path takes these women. There's the finish arch. Do you call it a truss or a gantry or an arch in Australia?
A gantry, yeah, the Finnish gantry, definitely. The big
Not a
thing that
term
is like
we
the
use
beacon
here. Yep.
of getting home.
It's what defines a big time bike race, to tell you the truth. That arch over the road, right? If you've got two cones, you're kind of at a local race. But when they make the effort to bring that in, you got yourself big time bike racing. And it's going to be Gill for the win. Nice job.
I feel like she maybe took them by surprise a bit there. Jana Gillick definitely has the most horsepower when it comes down to about 15 seconds. But she went pretty early, and I think Gill used her power up with very, very good effectiveness to establish that gap. Morgan Aldridge here, we've just swapped over to take a look at the bees from Cryogen. She was a name that consistently popped up in season one, so not surprising to see her out there again. She's got Hutter, her teammate, in that break. There is only three of them coming into the finish. Stephanie Ossenbrink is the other rider there. The 3-up sprint, not too dissimilar to that 4-up sprint that we just saw. Again, they really need to consider the timing and the very smart, timely and strategic use of whatever power-ups they may have.
Let me ask a question, Kate, that plays into your expertise. And I guess it would be personal depending on the rider that you're talking to. But for you, was it harder to win out of a small group? Did you like sprinting out of a larger group? Compare and contrast that, because a three-rider group is an interesting equation to run to the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're sprinting from a smaller group, it is far more about strategy and timing, because you can all look at each other. There's a lot more cat and mouse that goes on. There's fewer variables, but in saying that, you can really get the element of surprise a bit more if you time it well. And that's, my comment about kind of laying off and really hitting them quite hard, just going whack, I think is a really good small bunch way to sprint, by making sure that when you hit the back wheel of those two riders in front, that you're already moving 5 to 10 kilometres faster than them if possible, 2 to 3 kilometres if that's all you're doing, depending on whether people are kind of playing a bit of cat and mouse. Because by the time they react to that, it makes it very difficult to overcome it. Now, it's slightly negated by the fact that on screen we can see those orange numbers. Ossenbrink has opened up, and we can see the orange highlighted over there. So they know that she is moving. The element of surprise is somewhat reduced here.
Yeah, that's a big difference with esports, is the riders are much more aware of what's happening behind them rather than that ominous sound of somebody dropping it down into the 11. Well, Ossenbrink gets that one, Aldridge, and then Hutter in that order there. Great racing for our B women. Nothing quite like that sound. It really changed when carbon wheels came into play too, Kate, where the sprinters are slamming it down into their sprinting gear. You hear that sound reverberating through the carbon wheel. Final few Ks for the men here now.
So they're coming into the final sprint of the day here for the men, and so far we haven't seen a huge split. There's still a lot of riders in this bunch.
Well, it's splitting the group,
Coming
though. So
into
that
the
was the
finish.
final. Sorry, there's the final bonus. We can see tied up now, 32 points apiece for Nystrom and O'Reilly, as Yayant Mukhopadhyay, feel pretty good about that, ending up in third right now with points. These are our bonus points being tabulated. Lars Monks with 23. 22, just one behind him is John Heinlein there. So, and the oh my God, they killed Kenny team. So that gives you a look at where we're at right now. And again, a little bit of perspective. It's basically like Cameron O'Reilly and Philippe Nystrom for their teams have already scored a third place, because that's what you get. 30 points is on offer for third. The winner of this race will get 40. So they've done their teams a huge favor with their efforts up to this point. And now we move into the finale, as we're at about a K and a half to go here, Kate. It is on.
Well, Philippe Nystrom, he's a Costa Rican champion. He's a very proficient road racer out in real life, born in Costa Rica, but he lives in America now. And he's, pretty big on the racing scene over there domestically. But it's a bit of a different thing when it comes to the esports world. And he's almost like the silent assassin, because you don't actually see him in the bunch at all. He's very rarely on the front. He's not on the back. He always kind of hides in the middle and then just jumps out at that time. It's a big call. I'm going to put it out there pretty early this season. He is strategically one of the classiest esports racers that we've seen. He just really knows how to read it and how to ride. And so I think even the calculation of points, how he's improved each sprint, each KOM, to the point where now, even if he doesn't score anymore, he still will finish high overall. I think that says a lot for the class and caliber of their riding. Has the sprint is opening up already. They are coming to the finish.
So here we go. They have hit out now. We're into the finale. It's, Felton for the Penn Velo team that has opened the account now. They're at about 500 meters to the line. He's got a couple second advantage. Again, it's too early to get too excited about this, but certainly that's a big move from Felton right here for the Penn Velo team. Let's see if they can make this pay off, as that gap is holding at 2-3 seconds back to the group. He's in with the shot, Kate. I love the courage we're looking at here.
I think he caught them by surprise, and he went hard and he went early. He opened up that gap, and they're starting to come back. They are within sniffing distance. We can't see it on this shot, but let's flip it around. Oh, this is going to be really tight on the line, I think, Dave. They're coming very fast for him.
They're just going to get him. Quinn, good effort out there. The Penn Velo rider, Quinn Felton, has been caught. It looks like it's going to be Huang now coming through. Super impressive. Is this going to be enough? The AVRT team has had an exceptional hit. Boy, this sprint just goes back and forth all over the place out there. Wow, what a race.
Well, and I saw that Mashed Potato got second, and that's just a fabulous name, whatever that is. Now we're looking at the B women here, finishing off with the Herd of Meerkats, fabulous name that is. The C's, pardon me. They are just sprinting to the line. Oh, I think that Cheney might have just backed off a little bit too early there, because she just got rolled on the line. We've seen that happen a couple of times. This is a really hard sprint if you mistime it, and the riders do need to look for markers. The pink flags, I think, are the mark we found last night in APAC about where they want to sprint from. But let's just take a look at the replay here. Felton, it was such a big gap until it wasn't, and the speed and the timing use of that power up for Felton, for Wu, pardon me, he just won by a couple of bike lengths ahead of Mashed Potato. Philippe Nystrom, he was in third, so I think he'll pretty dominantly take that overall win, actually, based on cumulative points.
Yeah, we'll start adding those points up now. This, again, It's certainly you watch the race and you can see who wins, but there's a lot more to it, different layers as we'll look back here. This is the replay. And talking about getting rolled at the line. You're only going to lead for 1 meter. Might as well make it the last meter of the race. Time it up
Yes,
perfectly.
that's like the Cycling Bible by Dave Toll. I think that should be on page 1.
So great racing out here, no doubt, just across all of the categories throughout the divisions. What a way to open up season 2 here with day 1. It looks like we've got the bees coming in hot now. I heard your discussion with Anna about the Aero helmet out here. No reason not to wear it, is there?
Well, that's
Not going
what
to
I
get too
think. I mean,
hot.
there's no in the virtual world, there's no disadvantage to it. There, in real
Oh,
life, aside from being, not allowed by the federations, it's actually not an advantage because it would be so hot in there, very hard to hear what's going on as well. And
awkward.
in real
Yeah.
life, the
Oh,
cues are very different. Yeah, not to mention how awkward you'd look. People
can
would
you imagine
possibly tease
showing
you a
up
little bit
for
with that.
yeah for a high level road race with experienced racers? You show up with your disc wheel and your Aero helmet, and you will be hearing some snickering going on.
Yes, they'd
Might as
be
well wear
wondering who
might
that
as well
jumper
wear the world champion jersey that you bought online while you're at it. Then just go all in.
was. And no
The faux
socks if you
pas.
really want to look
No
legitimate in the cycling
socks.
world. But
Yeah.
if you bring
Oh,
it to
wear
this
underwear
race,
under your chamois. Make sure you wear underwear under
oh,
your
gee,
cycling shorts too.
oh,
Yeah.
there's been an awkward conversation or 50 about that. I can tell you when you encounter new riders and you want to tell them, but you're just thinking, or
This is gonna
at
be
what point
awkward.
of comfortability is it appropriate to do that? But
It's
to go
worse than
back to
telling
the
someone
sensible discussion. Oh no,
it's
I'm happy
worse
to
than
stay
telling
off the
someone
sensible.
I'm with you. Oh, Musette Crocodile. I remember them. We loved them. And here we go. Fisher, Oswain, and company finishing up for the Bees. There's the gantry. Looks like Fisher might have, well, you never, boy, you don't want to call these sprints too early, do you? Because that's what happens. A rider like Raikkonen comes by like a rocket ship, and that's not over as Raikkonen gets rolled here. Holy cow. It's flatter for the win. OTR in full effect. Boy, don't call these too early, Kate, right? As a commentator, it's easy to get baited in and take the baits just like a sprinter.
Yeah, I mean, one of the early things I learnt when commentating from the great Phil Liggett was it's very easy to say he will take the win, she will take the win, and then they don't take the win, and you look like a bit of a pork chop. So I think you really can't call it until that absolute push for the line.
Agreed wholeheartedly. Let's take a look at the C's now. Z-Sun, I love this kit. I love this team. And this is going to be Lawson now. So this is an attack that came right after the sprint here. So this is what it's all about. Taking advantage of an opportunity. Kate, I think anybody can relate to that, right? Opportunities only come along so often. When it knocks, go ahead and open the door, see what you got. And Lawson here is going to, I think this might just be enough. It's going to be a while here before we know the answer. So I'll take your advice. I don't want to be a pork chop. I'm going to say let's wait before we call it the win. But a
Yeah,
nice
let's see
second
if we can
advantage.
open this up to about 15 seconds. 15 seconds, and I'm comfortable because I
Then
think
you're no longer,
that's
yeah,
kind of
out of
the
pork
mark
chop.
that you're not really in the game anymore. He's got 10 seconds now, and Lawson, I mean, look at the heart rate, 189. He's clearly putting it all on the line, which I like. I like that commitment, Dave, because I really think if you're going to bother making an attack like that, you've got to be all in.
Uh, Ashton Lambie earlier today, Kate, and a nice shout out for you. Thanks, Philippe. We really appreciate having you out here racing. And as you know, Philippe, Kate and I agreed our Zwift Community Live World Rendezvous is going to be in Costa Rica. So if you can start scouting a nice location, right, Kate?
It is. Yes, we'd like a nice pool. We'd like some nice cocktails. That's pretty much our only uh,
Uh,
thing on the
Kate, look
list
at
so
this.
far. Oh, look at that! Grandpa's watching. I love that.
Hey, well, you know what, Grandpa? You should be awfully proud of Philippe. He's representing your family and your country very, very well. And we're not kidding. We love Costa Rica. That's cool, isn't
I
it?
feel like if we
Nothing
keep
beats.
going this way, we might get an invitation to an authentic home cooked meal when we're on
Sounds
our
good to
Costa
me.
Rican retreat at this point, Dave.
Kate, are your parents still with us, or are your mom and dad
Yeah,
still
my
rolling around?
Rob and Jude. My father actually
I
and mother
saw your
ran our local
mom
bike club
actually.
for a long
That's right. I
time.
saw your mom on
Um,
Instagram the other day, looking
yes,
awesome.
oh,
Now,
she's a legend. Yes.
I tell you what, for you, being an Olympian and a world champion was my question is the feeling is great, I'm sure, but making your parents proud, was that not the cherry on top of that whole experience? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I have to think that that was really the name of the game there.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say for me, the reason I got into cycling was because of my parents' love for it. And my grandfather actually started our cycling club before he went off to the war in the early 1900s. So he, yeah, he was a very big inspiration for me. And I think being able to have my parents and my grandparents, certainly trackside, was incredibly important to me. But I'll also say that becoming a mother has changed my view on it as well because if either of my girls so much as win a club race, I think I'll probably be jumping up and down and popping the champagne. So, should they ever choose to go down the path of elite sport, I think that I would definitely be their biggest cheerleader.
I love that. The one of the things that when you look around the globe, I think Australians are always viewed as having a great sense of humor. I'd say the same thing about the English and the Canadians for sure. But no country fights harder, fiercer than, or Costa Rica, absolutely. But no country has more of that depth, that fighting spirit than Australians. Pound for pound, ounce for ounce, I would bet on the Aussie every single time.
Well, for the Aussies, especially to go and compete in Europe, it's a massive commitment. It's not an easy thing to do, and that's something actually a reason, Dave, that the Aussies and Americans always have quite a tight bond in the peloton in the pro ranks because they're far away from their family. They don't get to go home and have a home cooked meal with their mum uh, after a race on a weekend like the Europeans get to do. So it's kind of a bit of solidarity that happens there. Chris Lawson, well, lucky you didn't
Just
call it.
getting
I
caught.
don't want to sound like a pork chop because he's getting caught now with a couple of Katie go, but valiant effort from him. He certainly made it count, and hopefully he can hang on to the back of this group of five until the finish. But it does look like he's already been dagged off a little bit, but honourable mention to him for his ride today.
Yeah, you don't know if you don't try. He's going to try to cover this move from Spivak here as this is for the win. And it looks like Cryogen's going to notch one up here. Nice job as Spivak will take this one for our C's out here. Still holds on for a podium.
And, well, can I just point something out, Dave? We noticed this in APAC last night, and I'm still searching for the answer. Spivak, super muscly avatar. Big
How do they do
biceps,
this?
big
We
legs
don't
as he
know.
was speaking. How do they do that?
We had the same situation. Nathan was pointing this out earlier today. I have no idea, and I will be reaching out to every contact I have to figure out how I can get a muscly icon because I mean my whole life I've wanted to be like that, and it's clearly not going to happen in real life. So come on, Zwift, throw me a bone.
Yeah, I mean, we can change our hair color and our hairstyle. I mean, I'd love to also be able to change my musculature if that was also an option, or simply find out the hack that makes your avatar musclier or less muscly, as it may be.
I have a strong
Melanie
feeling Nathan
Stevenson
knows.
here. Sorry, Dave. I
I
just
think
want to point
Nathan
out
knows.
that we're watching Melanie Stevenson here, and we might think this is a bit odd, the men's racing to have a woman, but something new this season is we actually have mixed teams, which is how cool is that? And
Yeah.
Melanie Stevenson racing for Cryogen in a mixed team here and taking the bull by the horns and off the front by 3 seconds. Go, you good thing.
What if the Velocity Vixens were to jump in with the men's B category? How do you think they'd fare?
I think they'd fare very well. I think you'd.
Me too.
I mean, I actually think you'd ruffle a few feathers amongst the fellas if you did that, because I think they may just get schooled by a bunch of chicks.
Oh, come on. You think that a grown man would be bummed out getting dropped by a woman? No.
Is yeah, that sounds like a slightly sarcastic
Go to
question
any
there,
bike
Dave.
path
Better
anywhere in the
not.
world. Yeah. It, how many times have you heard that one? Or well, Kate, the great thing is you just dust them. But I've heard so many talented women athletes say, "Boy, there's nothing quite like when you pass a dude on the bike path and watch how they respond."
Yeah, I think it's actually probably a very good training tool for some men, because ego is often quite a factor
Yes.
there.
Yes, always good to be self aware. Keep that in check as we take a look at Stevenson on her way home. So, again, oh, look at this now. See, another one of these burly, tough looking avatars that I'm trying to get mine a
See, are
little
they? I mean,
closer to
they're
this.
very
Yeah,
distinctly differently, aren't they? These two, I mean, both cryogen riders. And the only reason I actually realized that Stevenson was a woman and looked it up on Zwift Power was because the avatar looked so feminine compared to those muscles we were talking about. I'll see if we can choose those ourselves. A facial hair. I wonder
it
if the
helps.
women can do that as
Yeah.
well. I mean, equality across the board, right?
Yeah, that would be pushing it. That's for sure. Uh, but hey, you know what? In this day and age, whatever floats your boat, I would say. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
well, that's exactly right. I mean, that's a good Aussie saying. Is that you use that in the US as
Yeah,
well? Whatever
absolutely.
floats your boat.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is an old school saying that absolutely any American would say. We would think that was ours. That's for sure.
Oh,
Hey,
excellent.
did you hear? I'm progressing towards my Tron bike slowly but surely now. So I'm in the game there. I'm doing a lot more climbing, Kate. So just
Well,
wanted to
where are
give you a
you
heads
at?
up
How
on
many
that.
thousand meters have you climbed?
Well, to be honest, I used to always ride the Fuego Flats or Tempest Fugit, and was never. I was always just looking to get a good solid hour in, and I wanted to ride as far as I could, so flat made sense. But then my New Year's commitment was to take on a lot more climbing. So I still haven't even Everested yet this year, right? So I started doing this at the beginning of the calendar year, but I'm halfway there.
Oh,
A
that's
thousand
really
a
solid
thousand
work.
meters in a day is yeah, 1,000 meters in a day of climbing is just enough for me. That's breakfast for Nathan.
Well, Nathan, our producer, we've kind of cajoled him into racing the Tour of Oz this weekend.
I
Feel
heard.
like jumping in, Dave, and you can get on that as well. We've also got Anna Russell racing, so we've got a bit of a commentator games going on. Matt Keenan and I
Oh, great.
will get to commentate with Nathan and Anna. And look, if you want to jump in, we'd be more than happy to analyse yours with power files for you too, Dave, if you'd like.
Oh, good. I would love that. That would be super enjoyable for me. Awesome.
You sound so very genuine.
Do they have an E
Oh, dearie me.
category? If they have an
Oh,
E,
look, I do think they do. I think they do. They have kind of an all comers. I mean, maybe they could have a celebrity category for you, Dave.
well, the funny thing is, your other colleague, Matt Keenan, he is fit as a fiddle. As a matter of fact, of all of I would actually put Matt Stevens up there. Matt rides all the time as well. But both Matthew and Matt take their cycling seriously, as
They do.
do
I
you.
take
Have you ever
talking about
raced?
my cycling very seriously.
Kate, have you ever raced on Zwift?
I haven't. No, no. I mean, I
Yeah.
do ride Zwift very often, and I've thought
I
about
see you
dabbling in
riding.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I have this point, Dave, where if I open that valve and I start racing again, that I'll really get very encompassed in it, because I just know that I have that competitive streak in me. So I'm sort of just holding off at the moment, but I think the time has come for me to probably dip my toe in and see how I go.
It's well, And obviously, you have done your time at the very highest level. So all I would say is that we love having you as part of the team. And I'm a big fan of yours. I just want to see you get out there and kick some butt.
Well,
All right.
I wouldn't mind sprints, Dave. So I'll go you in a head-to-head sprint, and we'll see how we go. That's probably
As long as
what
it's
will work for me,
downhill,
given my career level. Yeah, yeah, downhill will help, especially if I can get one of
yeah, that'll
those
help.
monthly avatars. We've only got about 5K left to go in the Dave, to bring it back to what we're watching, because across all of these categories, there's been pretty aggressive racing because there's no big groups coming in.
I love the fact that we're covering all of the categories now as well. Thanks a lot for doing that, Nathan. As this is our D's that we're looking at. Cryogen. I'm going to have to do some research. I need to channel my inner Anna Russell and really dig in. I'm wondering what is the largest competitive cycling team that we've got on this platform. Cryogen is in that conversation. There's an awful lot of people who associate themselves as cryogen racers, and Stevenson is one of them here, along with
Yeah, we've got a
CW.
lot of cryo, AHDR and AHDRL, another one that also are really well represented. And of course, the Dirty Rascals, the dads inside riding
Huge.
trainers,
Yeah.
have categories across a lot of the different, have teams across a lot of the different categories.
When I started doing some in real life events with Zwift, the ODZ group was massive. I remember when they told me that they had more than 1,000 members of the club. It blew my mind at that time. But that was back when on a big day, Peak Zwift, well, at that point, Peak Zwift hadn't hit 10,000. I think you heard the other day, there were at one moment, it was a Monday morning around 10 o'clock last week, I think. Nathan would correct me, but there were 43,000 people Zwifting at once. The snake's head was chasing. They hit 45 today. I am hearing from Nathan. Yeah, that's a. Don't quote me on that, but sounds like we might have a new record. It's awesome for all of us who are involved in this world. Just seeing so many people loving the platform does a heart good.
Yeah, I mean, it is a huge community, isn't it? And just the sheer number of people that have signed up once again for community leagues. So they do have the community leagues across all the different time zones to suit everybody. But the other thing that's been popping up a lot are these fabulous tours. So we did a women's only tour, of course, last weekend, the Tour de Boudica. This weekend, we've got the Tour of Oz. There's the Tour of Zwift going on at the moment. So there's just so much racing to get involved in, and so many people signing up for it, which I think just increases the depth and the competitiveness across the board.
Take the plunge. Go for it. I think you're going to be amazed at what it does for your confidence, the feeling of accomplishment of finishing one of these races. And, Kate, when you get to the elite level, I love that you still have the perspective of understanding what it's like for a D racer jumping in for the first time. There is a lot of trepidation. You're exposing yourself out there. It's a little bit better in this platform versus in real life, as you don't feel those eyeballs burning into the back of your head, but you're taking a risk out there, and that's what it's all about in life. I just love the people that don't shy away from that, and then you really start to build on it once you get some momentum going. And that's been one of the things through the COVID era that we've seen with so many riders. And that ebb and the flow that we have, as you mentioned, seasons will be different. You're going to see different parts of the world, and athletes won't be contesting every single ZRL, but there'll be a lot of storylines to watch throughout the year. And we're into
Yeah,
season 2 already. And here's our sprint coming up, Kate.
and this is Stevenson with the teammate sprinting there, Chris W., both cryogen riders. They are riding in a mixed team. It looks like Stevenson is slowly making her way off the back wheel of Chris W. here, but may not make it around. But she was solo for quite a while, so that was a very impressive ride, and so good once again uh, to see the mixed teams going on. I know that for a lot of teams, especially at a community level and in these grades, that are starting to come through, Dave. It offers a lot more opportunity for the women and men to ride together, for them to have the ability to field a team, which is just unreal. And, we do talk about, how intimidating it can be, but I certainly know for men as much as for women to turn up for your first race in maybe D grade, there's everything you're worried about. You're worried about, do you look fit enough to compete? What are people going to think of you? Are your skills up to scratch? The number of things that can prevent you from even getting to the start line are huge. And so many of those barriers are taken away. And I think that we're really seeing the results of that come through. And now that we're in season 2, really pleasingly, we're seeing some of those D riders step up to the C category, and their progression is just really impressive.
I really agree about the barriers too, Kate. That's one of the best things about this platform is it's going to give opportunity for riders that would have never tried or never had it. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, well, it sounds like all the data has been analyzed. They've crunched the numbers, and it's time to take a look at our results here after a great first day of racing for season 2. Kate, I'll let you have the honors here as we'll start looking at the tables. And let's start with our America's West Division 1A women.
All right, well, Hayley Gill took the win there, and she's a new rider on the top step for our America West A division from last year. But some familiar names following her: Anna Rogers in second, Jana Gillick in third, Alicia Starts sitting in fourth, Morgan Cabot coming through in fifth, Joy Connolly, another name we're very familiar with, in sixth, and she did some solid work chasing through the middle of that race. Jennifer Girth in seventh, Lisa Hines came through in eighth, Rachel Winchester in ninth, and the ever-present Barbara Fazzoli coming in there in 10th.
So that's our A's. Let's take a look at the B's now with Stephanie Osenbrink taking the win as the Canadian, only 2.9 watts per kilogram. What an efficient ride. She's the only rider, Kate, down in the twos. Impressive, Stephanie. Morgan Aldridge of CrowdGen ending up in second. It's going to be Grace Hunter in third, Claire Law for fourth, Karen Peters for fifth, Stephanie Burns, Yvonne Valbro, Natika D in eighth, Stephanie Shu in ninth, and Ashley Hudson rounds out our top 10 for the B women, America's West.
Let's take a look at the C women. Christine Culver, there's a name we've come to hear a lot about, and she came in with the win there, so great ride by Christine. Beverly Cheney in second, Bria Fallen in third, Katie Slater in fourth, Kelsey Trannell in fifth, Heidi Erickson came in sixth, Marcy Barley in seventh, Claire Babcock came in eighth, AJ Breck in ninth, and Cola White Dog came through for 10th.
And this gives us a chance. Looks like the D results will still be coming in. I'm going to just jump right in with our men's mixed West Division 1A with Stephen Wu taking the win. Mashed Potato in for second. Philippe Nystrom third. Lars Monks in fourth. Jacob Claffey in fifth. John Vanderveen in sixth. Then we've got in seventh place Brett Byland. Brian Kellison, and thanks again, Brian, for sharing your Twitch stream with us today, in eighth place. Mike Evanchuk in ninth, and Braden Kersey rounds out our top 10. A lot of Canadian flags up there.
Big day for the Canadians in both the men and the women, and here again in the Div B. So E. Flatter took the win there ahead of Jerome Ryken and Jeremy Hopwood rounding out that podium. Trent Burlace came in fourth, Joey Maguire in fifth, Wai Heng Chang in sixth, Mike Metz in seventh, John Barth came in eighth, Neil Hodgson in ninth, and Andre Fugner came in that 10th spot.
Let's take a look at the C's now, as it was Aaron Spivak taking the win, Thane Phillips for second, Brent Beller in third, Jason Woodke in fourth, Rich Campbell fifth, Curtis Midden in sixth, Peter Blumke in seventh, Joe Butler eighth, Kevin Koopmans in ninth, and Marco Hilchuk will round out our top 10 for the West C's.
And we don't have the results through for the D's yet. We've got a couple. We've got Chris and Melanie, we saw them sprinting for that overall there. The other riders, we've still got a few coming in. So we'll get those results as soon as we can, but you can also find them, of course, on Zwift Power, or if you go to WTRL racing.com, you can find all the information there as well. Well, Dave, we've seen week one, pretty tough course to start the series with. And this year, this season, slightly different because we'll have 5 points races and only 3 teams time trials. So that'll mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, we'll be out at RGV next week for our team time trial, the Route Grand Vitesse. That's always a lot of fun. Kate, another fantastic day. So good to be back in the mode as this was exactly what I needed here in 2021. Get the blood flowing, some good energy. Great racing today by all of our gladiators out on Zwift. So thanks, everybody. Look forward to seeing you. I'll throw it back to you, Kate, for our final goodbye.
Well, I agree with everything you said, Dave. And one thing we didn't bring up is your newfound love and affection for both sourdough and homemade pasta. So we might delve into that one next week, but you can enjoy a little bit of homemade goodies over the weekend. Thank you to everybody for joining us. Please check that WTRL website to get a bit of a wrap-up of everything and all the details for next week. But from Dave and I, thanks for joining, and we'll see you same time, same place next week.